Hey voters, Anthony the Internet Politician here. Before I begin, do not forget to like and subscribe to keep up to date on new content. Today we're going to talk about the Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1970 and the rights of the states. So Biden is creating a vaccine mandate, which is not an executive order, which forces businesses with over 100 employees to vaccinate and or test regularly for COVID-19. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, based out of the Labor Department, will be enforcing it. However, the office is greatly diminished and may be unable to enforce anything. The previous president reduced OSHA's workforce to Nixon-esque levels, effectively neutering it. And assuming that any business could be found guilty and fined, it would be a $13,600 per violation. Just on a side note, an executive order was issued that requires federal employees to be vaccinated. While the executive order does not specifically cite termination for failure to vaccinate by the deadline, we can safely assume that would be the penalty. Supposedly, by Friday of this week, the terms will be laid out. Now, getting back to private companies with over 100 employees in the states, this reminds me of something that occurred about 160 years ago. While we all know the Civil War was really about the ethics of slavery, it has also been argued that it was about state rights. How can some guy in an office in the District of Columbia really know what the states want or need? Well, in this case, a law passed in 1970 seems to be clearly defined. Obviously, Congress members from many states voted to pass the law. I'm going to read a few parts of the Occupational Health and Safety Act of 1970. You can find links to this document, the executive order, and a few news reports in the description. So, Section 2, Subsection A of the Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1970 says, the Congress finds that personal injuries and illnesses arising out of work situations impose a substantial burden upon and are an hindrance to interstate commerce in terms of lost production, wage loss, medical expenses, and disability compensation payments. Essentially, it means that getting hurt or sick reduces productivity and costs money. So then we go down to Section 2, Subsection B. It says, Congress declares it to be its purpose and policy through the exercise of its powers to regulate commerce among several states and with foreign nations to provide for the general welfare to assure so far as possible every working man and woman in the nation safe and healthful working conditions and to preserve our human resources. This says this is just a statement of their goal by passing the law. Moving on to Section 2, Subsection B, Part 3, by authorizing the Secretary of Labor to set mandatory occupational safety and health standards applicable to businesses affecting interstate commerce, and by creating an Occupational Safety and Health Review Commission for carrying out adjudicatory functions under the Act. This empowers the Secretary of Labor to create standards and review of said standards for the purpose of executing them. So then Section 5, Subsection A, Part 1, and I know this is dry, but I'm getting through it and we're almost done. Each employer shall furnish to each of his employees employment and a place of employment which are free from recognized hazards that are causing or are likely to cause death or serious physical harm to his employees. Essentially, employers must keep a clean and safe workplace. I should mention there are a few industries where this rule is exempt, like mining and nuclear, obviously. So where does the state rights come in? Well, one can argue that states are sovereign and thus federal laws only apply to businesses that function in multiple states, thus making Section 2, Subsection A, quote-unquote, work situations impose a substantial burden upon and are a hindrance to interstate commerce to mean only those businesses. For example, Apple has stores in almost every state. Thus, the law would be enforceable federally against them. But Andy's Arcade in Ohio, I made up the business name, so, it's fake. Anyway, but assuming there was an Andy's Arcade in Ohio with 101 employees that only serve Ohioans, so that law would not apply. Essentially, they have one location. All their employees are based at that location. They only do business with people in the state of Ohio. Thus, the law should not apply, if that makes any sense. So to be honest, it is a huge stretch, my example, Andy's Arcade. Supposedly, some states are filing lawsuits to combat the OSHA thing. And the problem is, with the court striking down state mandates against masks, OSHA seems to be a difficult law to override. And before anybody goes, well, what about the executive order about the federal employees? Well, that is actually the right of the president and his cabinet to federal employees. You're under them. That it doesn't matter what state you're in. You're a federal employee. You have to follow that rule. There's no arguing out of that one. So personally, I have a problem with federal officials telling states what to do in a blanket manner because each state is different. In Ohio, Governor DeWine, a Republican, has been hesitant to enforce laws in either direction when it comes to the pandemic. This is one reason why I think he's a better governor than most other Republican governors. He's allowing the counties and local jurisdictions to do what is right for themselves in this matter. It may seem a little laissez-faire, but he is providing the resources for them to do what they see best. And this is a prime example of true republicanism, true conservatism. You stay out of the hair, let them do what they need to, and just provide the resources as they need it. That is conservative 101. So hopefully that explains the situation as far as when it comes to OSHA and state rights. I hope that answers the question for you watching in case you ever were pondering it. At any rate, this is all the time that we have for today, voters. Remember, a good voter is an informed voter who can think for themselves. Do not forget to check out my previous videos on this channel, as well as like and subscribe to keep up to date new content. Thanks for watching.